everyone, and welcome to Read This Now, the weekly webcast where Brad Gustafson and I read two books that we think you should read. When, Brad?
We should read them from a socially safe distance and right now.
Exactly, as soon as possible, and that is responsible during whatever your reality is right now. How are you doing, my friend?
You know, we're doing okay. It's good to have family and friends and books, and what better time to share a couple good titles than when we maybe have a little bit of extra time to dive in, right?
Right, or just when our realities might not feel like there's extra time, but they feel really different from what
Mm-hmm.
we're used to, right? I think for a lot of people, you and I have talked about this before, books can represent kind of a safe place, no matter what's going on, you can open up a book and either escape or relate to characters to help you feel okay about whatever's going on in the world. And so reading seems really important right now to me.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I've been escaping a little bit. I finished a series, or at least I'm all caught up through all the books that have been released. And I was telling Deb, I think last night, I'm worried I'm going to turn into a fanboy because I love this series so much. For I think the first time ever in a series, I was researching like T-shirts and stickers and posters for this book series. And just because, when the series is over, you need more and you want to keep interacting and connecting. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, are you going to tell us which one that is, or is that your book this week?
No, it's not my book. So it's the Red Rising series. I think I book talked the first book probably several months ago or maybe even a year ago on the show. So.
Oh, wow. That's exciting. I love that stuff too. And I don't think there's anything wrong with letting your geek flag fly when it comes to being a fanboy, fangirl, fan person for your favorite author or series. I think that's awesome.
Right. I wanted to get a Howlers shirt. That's it's this epic sci-fi universe. And one of the groups there, anyway, because most people on the planet would not know what the shirt was, but in public, you'd have a connection for someone who said Howler, right? I mean,
exactly. I have a sticker on my laptop that is from the Lee Bardugo series, the Crooked Kingdom series, and it says "No mourners, no funerals." And whenever someone says something to me about that, I'm like instant BFF, right?
Exactly.
You have that in common. That's awesome. I love it.
Cool. Well, what do you think, Jen? You want to go first this week, or you want me to?
Sure. No, I'm happy to go first this week. And Brad, I need you to look at me seriously in the eyes when I say this right now. I mean, I know that every week I recommend a book that I think you should read right now, but you in particular, if you haven't read the book talk that I'm going to book talk, or the book that I'm going to talk about today, you in particular need to pick it up ASAP because you will love this book. I know. It has Brad Gustafson.
Taking notice, dialed in. You got me right here. That's kind of a cool effect.
How about that? I didn't even try. I didn't even know. But at any rate, I back in the day when I was a school librarian, one of the most popular series in my library was the Lightning Thief series by Rick Riordan. And if you haven't, for those of you who are watching this, if you haven't read that series, it's like this epic adventure series about these modern kids. It takes place in the modern world who also just happen to be, unbeknownst to them until the book starts, they happen to either be related to or in some way pitted against Greek and Roman gods who also live on planet Earth, but in this like sort of secret society, right? And they are these like fun, fast-paced, page-turning, epic adventures that my kids could not get enough of. And all the while they're reading them and they're learning about Greek mythology, right? It's just like coolest series of books. And then, I don't know, a few years after those books came out, Rick Riordan also wrote sort of a companion series called the Red Pyramid series, which was very similar series. But the characters in this series of books were biracial, and they focused on African mythology instead of Greek or Roman. And I happen to teach almost always at schools that were primarily African American in terms of their populations. And I remember when that series came out, kids would come to me and say, "Do you have any more books like this?" And of course, I would point them to The Lightning Thief, and they'd be like, "No, I want a book like this, but with Black people in it." And at that time, I mean, this was 10 plus years ago now. At that time, there just weren't that many books like that, fantasy books featuring people of color.
Mm.
So over the years, I've gotten really, really excited about the fantasy genre as it opens up and begins to include more volumes that features more diverse and inclusive characters. So I bring that up because Rick Riordan last year created this whole new series called Rick Riordan Presents. And I want to read the little blurb from the back, okay? It says, dubbed the storyteller of the gods, Rick Riordan is the author of 5 New York Times #1 best-selling series, including Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which brings Greek mythology to life for contemporary readers. Millions of fans across the globe have enjoyed them. The goal of Rick Riordan's Presents is to publish highly entertaining books by authors from underrepresented cultures and backgrounds to allow them to tell their own stories inspired by the mythology, folklore, and cultures of their heritage. So it's like taking the premise of Riordan's books, but then amplifying the voices of those who haven't been heard to allow them to tell their own stories like that. And the first one in that series is called Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. And oh my gosh, it is so good, Brad. I want you to look at how thick this book is. It's a great big thick book. What's that? Oh, somebody's coming to say hello.
You've got fans in the Gustafson household. They're bringing me props to support your book talk here. So
yes, okay, yes. So they all know how awesome Percy Jackson.
They love his book. So, but go ahead. The one you just held up, beautiful cover.
So Tristan Strong, and for all those Gustafson kids who love Percy Jackson, they are going to love this book. It's 500 pages, and Brad, I read it in a day and a half. And I'm like a slow reader because it is so fast-paced. Every chapter is like a cliffhanger. Every chapter is an adventure about this boy named Tristan who lives in Chicago, who is having he's just in this terrible pit of despair when we meet him because, one, his best friend has died, and we don't really know all the reasons behind that yet in the beginning of the book. But also, Tristan's dad is a boxer. Tristan's grandpa is a boxer. And Tristan has been training to become a boxer his whole life. And he has his first bout and loses. And both his grandpa and his dad are so disappointed in him that they decide he needs to go to Alabama to live with his grandparents for at least a month to beat some hard work into him. And so when he goes down to Alabama, some things start to happen that he's not prepared for. One, his best friend's journal that he's been carrying with him, which contains all the stories that Tristan's grandmother told him as they were growing up as kids, stories that are rooted in African folklore and in African American tales and fables, etc. That journal begins to glow. And then suddenly some of the characters or the people that Tristan thought were characters begin to appear in the real world. And what we learn is that world of the stories really exists and is in trouble, and Tristan is the only one who can save them. And Tristan, who starts out feeling like he can't live up to his name as Tristan Strong, finds out he is stronger than even he believed he could ever be. And I loved it. It's funny. It's like a pure adventure, and it lives up to the Rick Riordan bar of adventure stories. And anybody who loved those books will love it too. And I think you should read it right now. I want to be sure. I keep mentioning Rick Riordan, but he's not the author. He's just the one who is presenting.
Oh, okay. Good distinction.
Yes, is Kwame Mbalia, I think, or I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. I'm sorry, I haven't practiced it enough, but that's his name, and I'll make sure that I put it in the notes for the video. It's his very first book, and oh my gosh, out of the park. Boom. So I love this book. I think you should read it now, and I think the Gustafsons in particular need to get a hold of it ASAP.
Yeah, I think you've sold everyone under this roof with that one. That was pretty compelling. Thanks. So, when you shared that book talk would be one that would resonate with me, I'm coming at everyone who's listening right now. I feel like the world would benefit from reading the book that I'm about to share. partly because I think we're living through times with COVID-19 that are just unprecedented change and fear and different. And in some cases, I don't want to make light of it, but sometimes there is a little bit of a silver lining with different, right? Whether it's extra reading time, I don't, maybe not. But a lot of times there's just anxiety and hardship and stress and things like that, which is exactly why a fable could help. In my book, this has been a favorite for years. I book talked it probably years ago, but I pulled it back out recently. It's called the Froggy Fable. And here's a really interesting thing. So the premise of the book is Froggy does not like change, okay? And he goes through a series of animal adventures that teach him a moral or a lesson, and I'm not going to articulate what that is, but here's the really interesting thing about the book. In light of the crazy times that we're living in right now, I actually looked at this and read it from the end of the book to the beginning, because in this book, he starts out alone and loving his introverted life and morphs into learning to connect with others. Well, it almost feels a teeny bit like the opposite of what many of us are going through right now, where we've gone from, in some cases, our hyper-connected, super busy, fast-paced lives where we're interacting in large groups with lots of people to something a teeny bit more low-key and isolated in some cases. So I looked through this and read it backwards, almost thinking like, what if John Lechner rewrote this backwards? And I thought, well, he probably won't rewrite it backwards at my request, so I just read it backwards. And I got a sense of, and the reason that I did that, Jen, was I got a sense of what were the benefits that why did Frog love his isolated, introverted life? Because maybe I could glean some hidden insights that I hadn't arrived upon yet. And just looking at it through that different lens, it helped. I don't know, it was just very helpful and a little bit therapeutic. But then, of course, reading it the correct way is helpful in any change that you're working with, including a pandemic. So I don't read a lot of fables. I've been reading different fables lately, leadership fables, kids fables. But I do recommend that you read this now, not just because it's a good story, because it's an ultra relevant topic, change.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how, like some of those universal themes, when we look at literature, whether it's for children or for adults, but throughout history, for as long as we've been writing down stories, some of those same themes endure, dealing with change, dealing with loss, navigating a new environment, getting along with people differently, having to be self-reflective, all of those things that humans struggle with. They show up in literature over and over and over again, which of course, like, is the reasons why we read, right? It helps us
Right.
feel more connected, less alone, all of that.
And why is it so much easier to learn a lesson or glean important things your heart and mind kind of need to absorb from animals or a fable than it is from like a spouse telling you the lesson, or your mom calling you and telling you the lesson? It's like, oh, a frog said it. Yeah, that really connects. I don't know what it is about that.
There's no other baggage attached to Frog, right? You don't remember that time that Frog made you grumpy. Like,
right.
baggage attached. And I mean, that's, I think, one of the most powerful parts of stories, and they help us understand the people at home that we should be listening to more often, right?
Good save. Thank you. I'm going to turn up the volume here. Yes.
They remind us that we should be listening to Debs and Davids in our lives much more often.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, my friend, if people would like to see more of these videos or check out the archive of our list of books that we've been reading over the last year or so, where can they go?
Yeah, not if they would, because they would. We assume they would. We know they're just knocking at our door for this. No, but in all seriousness, check out our archive and links to past shows and just a nice list of recommended books from Jen and I over the years. It's at bit.ly/read_this_now. Right?
Perfect.
It's like riding a bike, Jen. It's like riding a bike.
Perfect 10. Well,
all right.
Great week, everyone, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I hope you're able to still do some reading, and that reading is bringing you a lot of joy.
Yeah, be well.
See you next time.